Alright, so I'm going to do this. I told MK I would, so here we go. Just for you, MK, this is the quote-unquote history of Nuzlockes from beginning to now. Now, unfortunately, the only real history part of this that I'll be going into is the fact that it was started by a student by the name of Nick Franco, who, instead of doing his schoolwork one night, decided he was going to play a game of Pokemon Ruby and make it harder on himself. The first three infamous rules that follow all Nuzlockes are always the same. You can only catch the first Pokemon encountered on a route. If a Pokemon faints, it's dead, and any caught Pokemon has to be nicknamed to strengthen your bond with it. Now, I will state, you know what, no, I had a whole little paragraph here I'm just going to completely cut out that was going to give more information, but given the nature of the way people react to things anymore, I'm, as we speak, live editing, and I am just completely cutting that section of the script that I wrote out here. Now, to date, there are currently, and I'm going to be once more live editing, checking on this because I want to make sure that I get it correct. 21 different types of a Nuzlocke. So what are they? In short list, there are Hardcore, Soul, Wed, Egg, Mono, Wonder, Apaka, Gift, Gen, Unique, Noko, Chess, Zombie, Loser, Ball, Star, Sleep, Task, Draft, Tribe, and Shining. There may be more than that, but my head is spinning already over how many this makes. So, small caveat before I really get into what each one of them are, unless I otherwise directly state, all rules of the vlog variant I'm going over will be the base 3 with whatever stipulation the specific one I'm talking about entails. So, let's start at the top. Hardcore Nuzlocke takes 3 primary rules with the added restrictions that you cannot make any Pokemon higher level than the next progression battle's highest level Pokemon, and you cannot use items in battle. Pretty straightforward. Everybody knows what a base Nuzlocke is. Now, real quick, I will point out I'm not going to be counting Extreme or Randomizer or anything like that as their own separate unique Nuzlockes because they're both just variants on all the other 21. And I don't feel like adding another 2 paragraphs to this to begin with, so there you go. Now, Soul Link, as that was the next one I listed, is a 2-player Nuzlocke where each Pokemon is soulbound to one in the other player's game. If one dies, they both die. Straightforward. Now, a Wedlock, humorously enough, is technically a 1-player Soul Link, but it is its own separate listing per Nuzlocke University, which I will be linking in the description down below. The difference between them is that while Wedlock is 1 player, in battle you may only switch between the paired Pokemon. So, effectively speaking, you're still catching linked Pokemon, you have to catch them in pairs. Moving on, we have the Egg Lock, which basically just states that anything you catch has to be traded with an egg in your PC, and then it has to be hatched. There you go. You add that to the 3 basic rules, you got your Nuzlocke. Monolocks add the stipulation that all Pokemon must be of the same type. Whether this means if you have a pure electric type, such as the Electros, and then you can only use other pure electric types, is left purely to the preference of the locker. This is also, however, usually referred to as a gym leader challenge as well, due to the nature of the rule set. Well, we're already making a lot of progress here. I'm already through the first page of my script, and I got 2 more to go, and we're only about 4.5 minutes in. Interesting. Alright, so moving right along then. Next up is the Wonder Lock, which is also referred to as the Surprise Lock. Basically, it states that you have to surprise/wonder trade any Pokemon that you catch, and let Fate decide what you use, even more so than you already have by if you're using a randomizer or not. That's a lot to say. Better be lucky I like you, MK. because this is all specifically for you. Next up is the Apocalypse. Funny name, but effectively speaking, this is honestly my favorite sounding one of all the previously ones that I've listed off, all the 21 layers. Basically, in this rule set, the runner is assigned or selects an apocalyptic disaster theme for the run, which will dictate what types of Pokemon can be used. For example, if you have, we'll say, Tsunami, you can only use water types, or I'm sure that there can probably be an argument made for like electric types in there as well, but I don't really know exactly what an Apocalypse is aside from what I see on Nuzlocke University, so I'll leave that for you guys to further research if you're interested. Now we have the Gift Lock. Basically, you can only use gifted Pokemon, the Flying Terra-type Pikachu in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, for example. Or the Pokemon has to be one given to you, not traded by an in-game NPC. Next up, we have the Generation Lock. This one is actually kind of grueling. Starting at Gen 1, obviously your red, blue, yellow, all that. A player goes through each generation in order, no skipping, and you get to use your surviving championship team as the starter set for the next generation. So if you have for example, a Raichu, a Charizard, and we'll say Cloyster as the only 3 surviving party members from when you beat the Elite Four in Generation 1, those are the starters you get to pick from in Generation 2 for Gold, Silver, and Crystal. So have fun with that one. Unique locks, basically you get one type of Pokemon to use. That's it. If your first one you catch is a normal type, your first one is a fire type, your first one is a water type, that's all you get, so settle in, you're in for a long haul. No kill. If your Pokemon kills any other Pokemon in a single hit, it dies. Pretty straightforward. Now this next one here, the Chess Lock, is very detailed. Basically, the player gets a set number of Pokemon they're allowed to catch, each of which is assigned to roll on restrictions based on the different pieces on the chessboard. So, for any of you other individuals out there listening to this that like chess like I do, then you'll know by immediate count that gives you a total of, I believe it is 16, because there are 8 pawns. Yes, so you get a total of 16 Pokemon to use throughout the entire game. The rules for each piece, quote unquote, are as follows. The king is your starter, must remain in the party at all times, and if it faints, you lose, just like in chess. If the king dies, you lose. The queen, the only restriction it has is that it must be a female Pokemon. Bishops may only know 2 damaging moves at any time. If it knows more or it has more that can't be deleted, then you have to pick 2 for permanent use. Knights may not use any moves with a base power greater than 16. Rooks may not use any damaging moves with secondary effects, but may use non-damaging moves that have effects. So for example, Air Slash, I believe, is the one that usually gets paired with Togekiss that has Serene Grace and causes you to flinch. Can't be used by a Rook. However, things like Toxic may be used. Kind of give an example on each there. Pawns, however, have the most caveat to them. They cannot evolve. They must be the lowest stage of its evolutionary line. So you can't use you can't go and catch a Charizard or a Wartortle and use it as a pawn. It has to be the base, lowest level stage of the evolutionary line. So if you're thinking about Pikachu, then you would have to use Pichu for your pawn. Now, if it defeats the gym by itself with no assistance whatsoever from any other Pokemon, even if that means tanking a hit, then it can be promoted to any other role, regardless of whether or not there is another one in that role currently. Which means, technically speaking, you could have 2 Queen rank Pokemon. However, the rule caveat there is that the pawn must be a female if you're going to make it a queen. Other than that, that's your luck. Have fun if you choose to do one, and if you do, let me know. I'm interested to see how that all goes down. Next up, we have the Zombie Lock. Basically, in a Zombie Lock, a fainted Pokemon may be revived as a zombie, quote-unquote, and can only be healed by sacrificing, quote-unquote, a living Pokemon. Pretty standard stuff there for what the name would imply. Next is the Loser Lock. Effectively speaking, you have only normal Pokeballs that you can use, and you can only use Pokemon that are single-stage or 2-stage evolutionary lines. Ball Locks limit the player to one of each type of ball. Pokeball, Great Ball, Ultra Ball, Master Ball, Fast Ball, whatever you're using, whatever game you have, whatever the number of different types of balls that you have that you can use, that's all you get. You get 1 catch in each. Star Locks are actually kind of interesting, because a player is given a single Pokemon of each type, may not acquire new ones, or swap party members with box members unless a party member faints. Next up, you've got your Sleep Lock. Everyone, I'm sure, knows what a Sleep Lock is. Basically, you get 1 setting to beat the game. If you fall asleep in real life, you lose if you haven't beaten the game yet. Next, we have a Task Lock. Effectively speaking, every Pokemon has to be nicknamed after a 12 minutes of saying lock over and over and over again. I'm sure you can understand why I'm getting tongue-tied. Basically, every Pokemon has to be named after a real-life task or chore that you must complete before major battles. Whether it be battles with a rival, battles aboard whatever ship is in the game, or gym battles or Elite Four. Next up is the Draft Lock, which obviously only works best in groupings of 3 or multiples of 3, as a player has to draft what types they use, and they may only use Pokemon of that type. Now, Nuzlocke University did not indicate really on what happens if, for example, one person picks flying, one person picks electric, and somebody gets something like a Zapdos, for example, as an encounter. I am not sure if that disqualifies the person from using the Zapdos, either of them, and then they have to get a new encounter, what goes on there. But if anyone feels like looking that up, let me know. I'm interested. Then we have a Tribe Lock. Tribe Lock basically states that Pokemon are caught together in groups of random size to be determined by the roll of a d6, or a 6-sided die for anyone who's not a gaming nerd like me. And they have to fight together as a tribe. If you have one member of the tribe in your party, you have to have all of them in your party, or you cannot have any of them in your party. And then finally, the Shiny Lock. Everyone, I'm sure, has heard of it at some point or another. What goes on is that you have to catch a shiny Pokemon. Now, actually, I've been thinking about it, and there was a little bit more in-depth for the Tribe Lock, so I will drop right back to that for a second here. Basically, if you roll a 6-sided die and you get a 5, for example, normal Nuzlocke rules state if a Pokemon faints while you're trying to catch it, it's dead and you lose your encounter for the route. The Tribe Lock, in the case of rolling that 5, will give you 4 other chances to actually catch Pokemon from that route. Now, with Tribe Locks, especially earlier on in the run, since there is a very high potential for duplicate Pokemon to appear, and how hard it is to actually catch unique Pokemon for themselves, you are in fact able to use the same Pokemon multiple times in a tribe. Now, There was one other that I saw, one other caveat that I'm trying to remember. Oh, that's right. I completely fudged up here because in that entire listing, I never went over what a cage lock was. Alright, so the cage lock effectively was created by YouTubers A-Drive and Shady Penguin. The rules of a cage lock state you're only allowed to catch the first Pokemon on each route, obviously standard Nuzlocke rule. You cannot use TMs or held items on your Pokemon. You aren't allowed to switch Pokemon with your box throughout the game. Once a Pokemon faints, you can get one from your box or take the first encounter on the next route. And after each gym battle, there is a fight between the two cage lockers, because this is a variant on Soul Linking. And it is always a 1-to-1 battle. Each player sends out one Pokemon. The losing player has to release his or her fainted Pokemon, and the winning player gets to pick one of 3 privileges. They can use a TM, they get to use a held item, or they can revive a Pokemon, or effectively, I would imagine, give it an extra life. Now, the cage matches in and of themselves do have a little bit of variation on it. Basically, a Pokemon can only enter a cage match twice throughout the entire run, with the exception of the final 6-on-6 cage match. Now, if both players defeat the Elite Four and the champion, there is an additional 6-on-6 cage match, which will determine the winner of the Nuzlocke, or cage lock. So basically, you have a 6v6 after the final gym battle, and then from there, both of you take on the Elite Four. If you both beat the Elite Four, then there's another 6-on-6 battle to determine who actually wins the cage lock. Now, with all of that out of the way, and me saying the word Nuzlocke probably close to 90 times in the last 18 minutes, and this is already long as hell, I may or may not, very likely not, come back to this in the future. But for now, though, this has been the quote-unquote history of Nuzlockes. Also, small side note, if I ever hear the word Nuzlocke again anytime soon, I may very well scream, because I imagine at this point my eyes are starting to look like the Pikachus in the thumbnail. So with all of that, you're welcome, MK. Thank you all for stopping by for the history, quote-unquote, of Nuzlockes. You all have a wonderful day.